Hey guys, this is Doug with fellowshipofthemartyrs.com. I'm coming to you again from Liberty, Missouri, and want to make a video about what's wrong with the Emergent Church, with Rob Bell, Brian McLaren, and the whole eclectic little group. Now, the Emergent Church is a ooey gooey, amorphous sort of a blob in a lot of ways, but there are some things they have in common, and I believe it's tremendously dangerous. I'm going to load up a documentary on the channel, or a link to somewhere else where it's located. If I have a problem with permissions, I'm not sure, but check in the description for the full link to the documentary talking about what exactly is the emerging church or emergent church. If you are in one, you need to run away. They will drift anywhere from universal reconciliation to incorporating New Ageism, contemplative prayer. Basically, it's a mixture of whatever kind of spirituality works in a postmodern kind of a world. In a world where everything can be deconstructed, where nothing really means what it says that it means what we want it to mean, and everything is happy. They are going to deny the return of Jesus. They're going to deny that everything's getting worse and worse, and instead push for an overemphasis on the love of Jesus with no emphasis whatsoever on the wrath, justice, discipline of God. Rob Bell in particular, I find irritating and snarky. His bullhorn guy video especially, but in general, he plays to the world. He looks like the world, sounds like the world, wants to fit in with the world, wants to play footsies with the world, and is not at all a radical follower of Jesus. What I find consistent across all of these movements of the emergent whatevers they are aware of the same kind of things that I commented on in the Apology to the World letter and my book, The Open Letter of Apology to the World, that church, as we've been doing it, is fundamentally broken. So on the very surface level, I have a problem with the emerging church because it's simply an effort to do church as we've always done it in a slightly different way, which is really all the reformer Martin Luther did, was try to slightly modify what had always been there before, thinking that would somehow fix it. And what we need is a complete overhaul. And so we have a pyramid megachurch model, and then we have a pyramid-shaped Rob Bell Mars Hill model, except instead of pews or stadium seating, they sit in sofas in the round. They still listen to a guy preach. They still take his word for everything. They still aren't led to hear the voice of God for themselves. They still are searching for something that works in their life, that has application to their daily schedule, and they are still not crucified, dead martyrs of Jesus Christ. It is basically the same pyramid, twisted to the side a little bit. It is still denominational. It still does not follow the model of church laid out for us in the Bible. It still relies on buildings and programs and structures and high priests, and it really is just a slightly more modern packaging of what is the same fundamentally broken temple model. And it is still staffed by Nicolaitans. Nico meaning those who set themselves above, Laetan meaning the laity. So Jesus twice says in Revelation 2 and 3 that he hates the Nicolaitans, and that is a paid clergy class that lifts itself up above all the people. And so fundamentally, at the very surface level, I have a problem with the emerging church because it presents itself as a completely different reformation, something completely different and new. It gets a lot of attention, and people are flocking to it in some number or another, simply because of the transfer growth in the churches of America. There's no real true growth. There's simply people moving from one thing to another, looking for something that tickles their ears more, has better child care, has comfier seating, has a shorter sermon, or whatever. And Rob Bell has hit on the formula with which to attract as many people as possible because he tickles as many ears as possible. All the way from no eternal hell to heaven is the love that you express to others around you, to yoga's perfectly okay, and contemplative prayer, and emptying your mind, and all kinds of stuff, lighting candles, walking labyrinths, all kinds of stuff that just leaves him bankrupt. I don't believe that Rob Bell ever knew Jesus. I don't believe that Brian McLaren ever knew Jesus. They can say nice things about him, but fundamentally the problem with all of these movements, whether it's reform, cessationist movements on the one hand, the emerging church, liberal, left wing on the other hand, or whatever, fundamentally the problem is these are people who have never had an encounter with the living God. Many of the emerging church leaders even describe themselves as agnostics, and they're not even sure in the morning when they get up if there is a God. They're questioning everything, deconstructing everything, believing that maybe there's lots of paths, and God is not exactly the white Republican old guy with a beard that we have been led to believe by Charlton Heston movies. They end up being a perfect lead-in into the New World Order, one world religion, and many, many, many will go that way. It is supremely dangerous, and I would urge everybody to run as fast as you can from anything that smacks at all of the emergent church. And there are those, we have one here in Liberty, that insist they aren't, but walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, swims like a duck, looks like a duck. It's a duck. I know I'm like way out there on a limb, and I don't usually just assert that somebody's not on our team, but I see a tremendous deep dark wickedness behind all of the stuff that Rob Bell and Brian McLaren and some of the others of that crowd are spouting. Now, certainly out on the fringes, there are those, maybe your local pastor, who see the possibility of increasing attendance by going this way, who like that it's a more positive message for them to be preaching than hellfire and brimstone, and just go along with the fad. But at the core, when you track back where this came from and who's connected to it, and you go back to German philosophers that worked with the Nazis and the same kind of doctrines of demons that consistently pop their head up all the time trying to destroy the people of God, I'm going to go with there's something really nefarious and ugly and dark at the center of it all. I encourage you to do your research. And pray for Brian McLaren and Rob Bell and anybody else that's that far gone, that is under a red dragon, that is under a delusion, and I don't know if there's a way for them to come back or not. I'm not sure what'll happen. But I think they're in a prime position to lead thousands and tens of thousands and maybe hundreds of thousands into the one world religion of acceptance and love, and this is heaven, and we will make it better and better, and there's no end in sight, and Jesus isn't coming back. They get enough power, their postmodernism is going to make it real easy for them to persecute the Christians who won't go along. The fundamentalist, conservative, whatever they want to call them, who just refuse to accept the new paradigm. I don't have any problem that Rob Bell is snarky enough, prideful enough, self-centered enough, and sure that he's right enough that he could be a very good tool when it comes time to hunt people down and eliminate all opposition. I can totally see him getting co-opted and being used and justifying it somehow in the name of love, because we have to create a better world and these people are in the way. If he's not an outright Satanist. Fundamentally the problem, whether at the deeper inner layers or out on the fringes, fundamentally the problem is there's no point. You do not, the whole idea is, as I'm watching this documentary, I'm impressed with how both sides, in some ways, the critics and the ones criticized, just flat don't know God. Just flat don't have an experience with Jesus and are relying on the Bible. Are relying on, this is what I believe. I've read it. I believe it. That's good enough for me. It doesn't have to be that. That's not the normal Christian life. That's not supposed to be the normal Christian life. I don't believe in Jesus because I read it in the Bible, or I grew up in that church, or my parents taught me that way, or whatever. I believe in Jesus because he showed up in my life in an indelible, permanent way, made it very clear that he is the one and only way to the Father, was more real than you were, than you are. More real than I am. I don't even know how to explain it. But whatever happened to Paul on the road to Damascus wrecked him forever. And that's the kind of experience I had. More than once. And that's the kind of experience a lot of people have. And the Lord wants, I believe, to show up in people's lives and prove himself to them. But too often we rely on what we've heard from the pulpit, what we've read, whatever. I don't see any good out of the stuff that's being spread from Brian McLaren, Rob Bell, and other affiliated various emerging church leaders. That you recruit people into a building to sit in a sofa and have a latte and listen to you talk is not fruit. If they are not changing their lives, becoming more holy, walking closer to Jesus, hearing his voice, walking in his ways, in radical obedience to their Lord Jesus, the one and only way to the Father, I don't see the point. Well, that's all for now. The documentary is pretty long, and I believe it will give you a much greater overview. If this is not something you're struggling with, if you're not involved in the emerging church, this is 2-hour video that I'd rather you not spend time on. If this is not on your radar, go feed somebody, go preach the gospel on the street corner. Don't spend 2 hours finding out what's wrong with this little piece of what's out there that you don't have any contact with and don't need. When it comes up someday in your life, the videos here, come watch it. But don't watch all my videos just because they're there. Ask the Lord if it's something you need, or if he'd rather you spend the time some other way. If you were just going to play video games anyway, then watch the video. But if you got stuff to do and you already know what's wrong, then just move on. There's a lot of good stuff in this documentary, but a lot of it I already knew, except for some of the characters involved and some of the roots of where this all came from, and the thought behind it, and how exactly secular this movement really is, and New Age. So anyway, it's your call, but I'm reluctant to say somebody just flat is not one of God's, but I've been looking these guys in the eye, watching the words that they say, and scanning them, and I'm going to stand on my assertion that right this minute, Rob Bell or Brian McLaren gets hit by a bus, they're going straight to hell. They are preaching another gospel. They are mangling up and seem completely unable to actually tell you what the gospel is. They will describe it as all kinds of things except the gospel. Now, you may have issue with me theologically on this or that thing, but I'm all about Jesus Christ. I am all about he is the one and only way, born of a virgin, raised on the third day, crucified, took on the sins of the world, sits at the right hand of the Father, period. This is entirely another gospel that these guys are preaching, and they should be anathema. So, or already are, or whatever, but it's bad. It's bad, and you ought to stay real far away from it. Thanks for listening. That's all for now. Lots more on the website at fellowshipofthemartyrs.com.